The wedding was already loud when he arrived, music spilling out of the hall, laughter rising and falling in waves. He stood near the back, one hand on his daughter's shoulder, the other holding a jacket he hadn't worn in years. He hadn't planned to stay long, just long enough to be polite, just long enough for her to see the bride walk in. He knew he didn't belong there. Everyone else had come as a pair, or part of a group. He came with a child who kept asking quiet questions he didn't always answer right away. When the bride appeared, the room shifted. Phones lifted. Conversations paused. His daughter squeezed his hand and leaned forward. That was when he felt eyes on him. Not curiosity, not judgment. Something sharper. A woman stood a few rows ahead, calm, still, watching him instead of the aisle. She leaned toward someone beside her and said something he couldn't hear. Then she turned fully and met his gaze. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Stop looking at the bride," she whispered. "Look at me." He didn't know who she was yet. But in that moment, something in his life began to tilt. Not loudly, not all at once, just enough that it would never settle the same way again. If you want grounded stories about quiet choices and their consequences, subscribe. New episodes every week. He arrived late on purpose. Parking farther than necessary gave him a reason to slow down. It also gave him time to check the small things. His daughter's shoes were still clean. The ribbon in her hair was straight. The card in the envelope hadn't bent in his jacket pocket. He held her hand as they crossed the gravel path, her steps uneven as she tried to keep pace. Inside, the room was already full, rows of chairs pressed close together, coats draped over backs. People standing in the aisles, turning sideways to let others pass. He stopped near the entrance, scanning for a place where he wouldn't have to ask anyone to move. He didn't want to interrupt. He never did. They found 2 seats near the back, one slightly behind the other. He took the one closer to the aisle so she wouldn't feel boxed in. He set the jacket across his lap, even though the room was warm. He didn't hang it on the chair. He liked having something to hold. His daughter leaned forward, her feet swinging above the floor. "Is she here yet?" she asked. "Not yet," he said. He kept his voice low, not because it was required, but because it felt right. Weddings had rules that weren't written down. He followed them carefully. Around them, people talked in soft bursts. Familiar names floated past. He recognized some faces. He nodded once or twice when someone looked his way, but no one came over. Most people didn't know what to say to him anymore. He didn't take it personally. He preferred it this way. He checked his watch, then stopped himself. Time moved differently when he was responsible for someone else. He no longer measured it by schedules alone, but by how long she could sit still, how long before she asked for water, how long before she needed to use the bathroom. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pack of crackers. He didn't offer them yet. Too early. The music shifted. Not louder, just clearer. People began to turn their heads toward the aisle. Phones came out. Conversations trailed off. His daughter straightened. "She's coming," she said. He felt it then. Not excitement exactly, but awareness. The room focused. He stayed where he was, resisting the urge to stand. He didn't want to block anyone's view. He rested his hand lightly on his daughter's shoulder so she wouldn't lean too far forward. When the bride appeared, the reaction was immediate. A ripple of movement. Smiles. A few quiet gasps. He looked, because everyone else did. Because his daughter wanted him to. "She looks like a princess," she whispered. "She does," he said. He didn't say anything else. He watched the bride walk slowly down the aisle, careful with her steps. Her dress held just high enough to clear the floor. He noticed small details without meaning to the way her father's hand shook slightly, the way the flowers were arranged unevenly at the ends of the rows. He was aware of himself in the room, of how he looked sitting alone with a child, of the empty space beside him. He didn't resent it. It was simply there. Then he felt the shift. Not in the music, not in the crowd, in himself. He sensed a tension that wasn't general, not part of the shared focus on the aisle. Something directed. He didn't turn right away. He waited, counting a few breaths. When he did look, he didn't know who he was looking for. A woman stood several rows ahead, closer to the center. She wasn't watching the bride. She wasn't holding a phone. She stood with her hands clasped in front of her, posture straight, expression unreadable. She was looking at him. He almost looked away. Habit told him to. He'd learned how to disappear in rooms like this. He'd learned how to be present without being noticed. But she didn't drop her gaze. Someone leaned toward her and said something. She nodded once, without turning. Then she spoke quietly, her mouth barely moving. "Stop looking at the bride," she said. "Look at me." He couldn't hear her clearly at first. He leaned slightly forward, unsure if the words were meant for him. Her eyes didn't waver. His daughter tugged his sleeve. "Daddy," she said, "that lady is staring." "I know," he said. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply looked. There was no challenge in her expression. No warmth either. Just recognition. As if she were confirming something she had already decided. He searched his memory. He didn't place her immediately. That unsettled him more than it should have. He was used to knowing where he stood with people. The music swelled as the bride reached the front. Everyone stood. He rose carefully, making sure his daughter didn't trip as she stood beside him. He turned his body slightly so he was between her and the aisle. When the vows began, he focused forward again. He listened without absorbing much. His mind stayed alert, watching the edges of the room, measuring distance. He noticed when the woman finally turned away. He noticed when others glanced at him, then quickly looked elsewhere. His daughter leaned against his leg, her weight steady and familiar. "Why did she say that?" she whispered. "Say what?" "That thing. About looking." He paused. He chose his words the way he always did. "She just wanted my attention," he said. "Why? I don't know." She considered this. Then she nodded, as if the answer were enough. He stayed standing through the ceremony, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. He didn't look back at the woman again, not because he wasn't curious, but because he was careful. When the vows ended and the room filled with applause, he clapped softly. He didn't whistle. He didn't cheer. He reached for his jacket as people began to shift and move. "Well, wait a minute," he said to his daughter. "Let the crowd go." She agreed without protest. As they stood there, near the back, he felt the space around him change. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. Something had seen him. He didn't know yet what that would cost. They didn't leave right away. He let the first wave of people move past them, bodies turning sideways, apologies exchanged quietly. He kept one hand on his daughter's back as they waited. The air felt warmer now, less formal. Jackets came off. Someone laughed too loudly near the aisle. "Can we see them up close?" his daughter asked. "Not today," he said. "They're busy." She accepted this, though she stayed where she was, watching the front of the room with open interest. He adjusted the ribbon in her hair, then smoothed it again when he realized it hadn't needed fixing. As they stepped into the aisle, he felt eyes on him once more. Not the same sharp focus as before, something more diffuse. People noticed him now in a different way. He couldn't name why, but the feeling followed him as they moved toward the exit. Near the door, two women stood talking in low voices. One of them glanced up, then stopped mid-sentence. Her expression changed slightly, not surprise, but recognition delayed by context. "That's him," she said quietly. The other woman followed her gaze. "Who?" She leaned closer. "That's the one she mentioned." They didn't realize he could hear. Or they didn't care. He kept walking, his pace even, his grip steady. His daughter swung their joined hands once, absent-mindedly. Outside, the late afternoon light was flat and pale. The noise from inside softened behind them. He stopped near the steps to put on his jacket, more out of habit than need. His daughter watched a group of children run past, their clothes already loosened, shoes half off. "Daddy," she said, "do you know her?" He paused with one sleeve halfway on. "Know who?" "The lady." He finished pulling the jacket on. "I've met a lot of people," he said. "A long time ago." That didn't answer my question. He looked down at her. She was watching him closely now, her curiosity quiet but persistent. "Yes," he said. "I know her." She nodded, satisfied by the honesty more than the detail. As they walked toward the parking lot, A man stepped into his path. Not abruptly, just enough to slow him. "Hey," the man said. "Good to see you." He searched the man's face. Then the name came. "Tom," he said. Tom smiled. "Didn't expect to see you here. I was invited." Tom glanced down at the child. "And this must be my daughter," he said gently but firmly. "Of course, sorry. I meant she's grown." "She has," he said. Tom shifted his weight. "You know who that was, right?" He didn't answer immediately. He adjusted his grip on his daughter's hand, then looked back at Tom. "Guess," he said. Tom raised his eyebrows. "Didn't think you two still spoke." "We don't," he said. "Usually." Tom laughed softly, unsure if it was appropriate. "Well, that's something." "It's a wedding," he said. "A lot of people here." Tom nodded, though his attention lingered. "She's doing well, very well. I know. How? I read." Tom seemed about to say more, then noticed the child again. He cleared his throat. "Well, congratulations," he said, gesturing vaguely. "On everything." He stepped aside. They reached the car without further interruption. He buckled his daughter in, checking the strap twice. She watched him, then leaned her head back against the seat. "She's important," she said. "Yes, more important than you." He closed the door gently. "Not in the same way," he said through the window. "And that matters." The drive home was quiet. She hummed to herself for a while, then fell silent. He watched the road, his thoughts narrow and controlled. He didn't replay the wedding in full. He focused on details he could manage: traffic lights, turns, the sound of the engine. At home, he moved through their routine with care. Shoes by the door, hands washed, dinner reheated and placed on the table in the same order as always. He listened as she talked about the flowers, the music, the cake she hoped there would be next time. "Next time?" he asked. "Another wedding," she said. "People get married a lot." "Some do." After dinner, he helped her with homework, sitting across from her at the table. When she struggled with a question, he didn't answer right away. He waited, letting her work through it. When she looked up, frustrated, he pointed to the line she'd skipped. "Oh," she said. "I see." He nodded. Later, as he tucked her into bed, she held onto his sleeve. "She didn't look mad," she said. "Who?" "The lady." "No," he said. "She didn't. She looked like she wanted something." He hesitated. "She looked like she wanted something?" He hesitated, not long enough for her to notice. "Maybe," he said. "What did she want?" He smoothed the blanket over her shoulder. "I don't know," he said, "but whatever it wasn't your problem." She thought about this, then relaxed. "Okay," she said. He turned off the light and closed the door partway. He stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to her breathing settle. Then he went to the kitchen and picked up his phone. There was a message waiting. Just one line. "It's been a long time. We should talk." He didn't reply. He set the phone face down on the counter and began washing the dishes, one at a time, the sound of water steady and unhurried. The name came back to him as he worked, not attached to a face at first, then fully. He dried his hands and stood there, still. Knowing a name didn't give him control. It only gave him context. And context had a way of changing things. He didn't answer the message that night. He didn't delete it either. He left it where it was, unopened beyond the preview, as if that preserved a boundary. In the morning, it was still there. In the afternoon, too. It waited without urgency, which made it harder to ignore. He made breakfast while his daughter sat at the counter, swinging her legs. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm thinking." "About what?" He poured cereal into her bowl, careful not to spill. "Work," he said. That was close enough to true. She accepted it and focused on her spoon. He watched her eat, counting bites the way he always did, not because she needed it, but because it grounded him. He walked her to school, held her hand until the crossing guard waved them through, and waited until she disappeared into the building before turning back. Only then did he take out his phone. He read the message fully this time. "It's been a long time. We should talk." No apology. No explanation. That was her way. It always had been. She spoke as if the context already existed. as if distance hadn't changed the meaning of words. He typed a response, deleted it, typed another. Finally, he wrote, "I don't have much time." The reply came faster than he expected. "Neither do I." They agreed on a place without discussing why. A cafe near his work. Public. Neutral. He chose the time carefully, making sure it ended before he had to pick up his daughter. When he arrived, she was already there. She sat at a small table near the window, her back straight, her phone face down beside her cup. She didn't look around when he entered. She knew he'd come. That certainty irritated him more than it should have. He ordered coffee he didn't want and walked over. "Hello," she said, standing briefly before sitting again. "Hello," he said. They didn't shake hands. Up close, she looked much the same. Older, yes, but not softened by it. Her hair was shorter than he remembered. Her clothes were simple, expensive, without being obvious. She had the same habit of holding still when she listened, as if movement were optional. "You shouldn't have come," he said. She met his gaze. "You came." He sat down, setting his cup between his hands. "I'm here," he said. "That's not the same thing." She almost smiled. Almost. They spoke carefully at first. Not about the wedding, not about the past. She asked about his work. He answered in broad terms. He asked about hers, though he already knew enough. "You read," she said. "Yes." "What did you think?" "That you did what you always wanted to do." She nodded once. "And you didn't." He didn't respond. He watched someone outside struggle with an umbrella that refused to open properly. The moment passed. She leaned back slightly. "I didn't expect to see you there. I didn't expect to be noticed. That was unrealistic." He looked at her then. "Why?" "You were never invisible," she said. "You just acted like you were." He shifted in his chair. He didn't argue. He had learned when silence carried more weight. "You have a daughter," she said. "Yes. She's young. She's 7. She considered this. Does she live with you?" "She lives with me," he said. "Her mother?" He didn't answer right away. He didn't owe her that information, but the omission felt louder than the truth. "She's not in the picture," he said. "I'm sorry." He nodded, though he wasn't sure what she meant by it. A server came by to ask if they needed anything. She declined. He asked for water. When it arrived, he drank it slowly, buying time. "I didn't ask you here to reopen anything," she said. "Then why did you ask?" She folded her hands on the table. "Because you're working below your capacity. That's not your concern. It is, if it affects what I'm offering." He stiffened. "I'm not interested. You haven't heard it. I don't need to." She studied him, the way she used to when she was deciding how much pressure to apply. "I need someone," she said. "Someone I trust. You don't trust easily." "No," she said, "which is why this matters." He leaned forward slightly. "I don't want to be part of your world again." "Why?" "Because I have a child," he said, "and your world doesn't make room for that." Her eyes flicked away just briefly. "That's not true." "It is," he said. "You make room for results, for momentum, for people who can stay late and leave early and pretend they're fine." She didn't interrupt him. She waited. "I can't do that," he continued, "and I won't." She nodded. "I know." He frowned. "Then why are we talking?" "Because," she said, "you don't have to do it the way you used to." He sat back. "That's not how it works." "It is if you let it." He shook his head. "I won't let my daughter pay for my ambition." Her voice stayed even. "I'm not asking you to." "Not directly," he said. Silence settled between them. Not tense. Measured. Outside, the umbrella finally opened. She broke the quiet. "Do you think staying small keeps her safe?" The question landed heavier than she intended. Or maybe exactly as she intended. "I think stability does," he said. "And if that stability is already eroding?" He didn't answer. His phone buzzed on the table. A reminder. 10 minutes until he needed to leave. "I have to go," he said. She followed his gaze. "Of course." He stood. She did not. This isn't over, she said. It is for me, he said. She looked up at him. We both know that's not true. He picked up his jacket. When you decide, she said. Call me. He paused. Not long, just enough. I didn't decide to be here, he said. I decided to be a father. She watched him walk away without calling after him. That afternoon, his daughter was quieter than usual. She walked beside him without skipping, her backpack heavy against her shoulders. You met her, she said. Yes. Did you like her? He considered the question. I respected her. That's not the same. No, he said. It isn't. At home, he helped her with dinner, letting her stir while he chopped vegetables. She spilled some on the counter. He cleaned it without comment. Later, as she colored at the table, he sat nearby, his phone within reach but untouched. You're thinking again, she said. Yes. Is it a bad think or a good think? He watched her choose a crayon, then put it back and choose another. It's a careful think, he said. She nodded, satisfied. That night, after she was asleep, he stood in the doorway of her room longer than usual. He watched her chest rise and fall, the steady rhythm unchanged by the day. In the living room, his phone lit up once. Then again. He didn't pick it up. He sat down instead, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, and waited for the feeling in his chest to settle into something he could carry. It didn't. He left work early the next day. Not because he wanted to, but because the call came while he was standing at the copier, waiting for a stack of reports to finish printing. His manager didn't lower his voice when he spoke. He never did. We're going to need you to be flexible this week, the man said. There are some shifts we need covered. He nodded. I can stay late today. That won't help, his manager said. Its mornings were short. He didn't respond right away. He watched the copier spit out the last page, then gathered the papers into a neat stack. I have school drop-off, he said. His manager sighed, already impatient. I know, but we're all making sacrifices. He looked up then. Not the same ones. The man waved a hand. Just think about it. He did, on the walk back to his desk, while he shut down his computer, while he signed out. By the time he reached the parking lot, the decision had already been made for him. At home, he packed his daughter's bag for the next day with extra care. A second snack, a note tucked into the side pocket, something simple he'd done since her first year of school. She never mentioned it, but he kept doing it anyway. That evening, she noticed his restlessness. You're walking fast, she said as they set the table. Am I? Yes, she said. Like when you're late. He slowed down. Thank you for telling me. They ate quietly. Afterward, she washed the dishes while he dried. She missed a spot on one plate. He pointed it out gently. She fixed it without complaint. Later, as they sat on the couch, she leaned against him, her head fitting under his chin the way it always had. Are you going to lose your job? She asked. He stiffened slightly. Why would you ask that? You're home early, she said. And you're thinking. He considered lying. He didn't. I don't know yet, he said. She nodded, absorbing this. Will we have to move? I don't know. Okay, she said. She stayed quiet for a while, then asked, Is it because of the lady? He exhaled slowly. No, he said. It's because of work. She didn't argue. She accepted his answer the way children sometimes do, not because it's complete, but because it's all they're given. That night, after she went to bed, he sat at the kitchen table with his phone in front of him. He read the message again. Then another came through. I'm not asking you to be who you were. He typed a response, deleted it, typed again. I can't afford instability. The reply came almost immediately. Neither can I. He closed his eyes briefly. He pictured his daughter's backpack hanging by the door, her shoes lined up beneath it, the routines he built brick by brick. He wrote, 1 meeting. That's it. The next morning, he dropped his daughter off and drove in the opposite direction of his office. The building he pulled up to was taller than he remembered, glass reflecting the sky, security at the entrance. Inside, everything moved with quiet efficiency. People walked with purpose, heads down, voices low. He followed a receptionist down a long hallway, his footsteps echoing faintly. She waited for him in a conference room. "You came," she said. "For one meeting," he said. She gestured to a chair. "Sit." He did. He placed his phone on the table, screen facing down. She didn't waste time. She outlined the role, the expectations, the compensation. She spoke plainly, without embellishment. When she finished, she waited. "It's more than I make now," he said. "Yes." "And more than I need." She nodded. "It comes with cost." "I know." She watched him closely. "Then why are you considering it?" He leaned back. He chose his words carefully. "Because my current job isn't stable," he said. "And because my daughter deserves better than constant uncertainty." "And you think this would give her that?" "It would give us options." Silence followed. She broke it. "You'd have control over your schedule." "For how long?" "As long as the work gets done." "And when it doesn't?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was steady. "Then we'd revisit." He nodded. He had expected that. "I won't miss school events," he said. "I won't travel without notice. I won't be available at all hours." She listened. "And if that makes me less useful," he continued, "then this won't work." She leaned forward. "I didn't build this by ignoring people's lives," she said. "I built it by expecting honesty." He held her gaze. "Then be honest with me." She didn't look away. "There will be moments where you have to choose." "Between what?" "Between showing up," she said, "and being present." He stood. "That's always been the choice." She didn't stop him. He left without agreeing to anything. At school pickup, his daughter ran to him, her backpack bouncing. "You're late," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry." She studied his face. "Did you choose?" He shook his head. "Not yet." She took his hand as they walked home. "You don't have to choose fast," she said. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes choosing slowly is choosing." That night, he sat alone in the living room after she fell asleep. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that carried weight. He picked up his phone. This time he didn't set it down. He didn't call either. He stared at it, aware that the space after the music had ended was filling with something else. Something that would not wait forever. The email arrived before he did. He saw it on his phone in the parking lot, the subject line short and careful. Schedule adjustment. He didn't open it right away. He turned the engine off and sat there, listening to the ticking sound as the car cooled. When he finally read it, there were no surprises. His hours had changed. Reduced in the mornings, extended later in the day. Temporary, the message said. Subject to review. He put the phone away and went inside. At his desk, he worked without pause. He didn't linger over tasks. He didn't take breaks he didn't need. When a coworker asked if he could swap shifts, he said no without explanation. He watched how that landed. A brief tightening around the eyes. Nothing more. By noon, his manager called him in. "We're adjusting roles," the man said, folding his hands. "Nothing personal." "It always is," he said. The manager frowned. "You've been less available." "I've been consistent," he said. "Just not flexible." The man sighed. "This position requires adaptability. It requires coverage," he said. "I provide that. Not in the mornings." He nodded once. "No." The conversation ended there. No argument. No raised voices. Just a quiet understanding that something had shifted. That afternoon, he left exactly on time. He didn't apologize. He didn't rush either. He drove to the school and waited in the usual spot. When his daughter came out, she scanned the crowd until she found him. Her shoulders relaxed when she did. "You're here," she said. "I said I would be." They walked home together. She talked about a group project, about a boy who kept forgetting his pencil, about a teacher who wore the same shoes every day. He listened, responding when needed, letting the rest pass. At home, he started dinner earlier than usual. He moved through the kitchen methodically, chopping vegetables, setting water to boil. She did her homework at the table, erasing and rewriting with care. Halfway through, she looked up. Are you going to work there forever? She asked. Where? Your job. He paused. Probably not. Why? Because things change. She frowned. I don't like when they do. Neither do I, he said. After dinner, he checked his email again. Another message. This one, shorter. We'll talk tomorrow. He knew what that meant. That night, after his daughter was asleep, he opened the cabinet where he kept old paperwork. He hadn't touched it in years. Inside were folders labeled neatly, evidence of a life that once moved faster. He pulled one out, flipping through pages he barely recognized as his own. He didn't miss that life. Not exactly. He missed the clarity it had offered, the sense that effort led somewhere predictable. His phone buzzed. A message from her. You don't have to decide tonight. He didn't reply. The next morning, he dressed his daughter in silence. She noticed. You're thinking again, she said. Yes. She tied her shoes with exaggerated slowness. You're not listening. I am. No, she said. You're thinking about later. He smiled. You're right. They walked to school, hands linked. At the corner, she stopped. Promise me something, she said. What? That you won't forget to come get me. He crouched to her level. I've never forgotten. Promise anyway. I promise. He watched her go inside, then stood there longer than usual. At work, the meeting was brief. We're letting you go, his manager said, eyes fixed on the desk. It's not working out. He nodded. When? End of the week. I'll need references. You'll get them. He stood, shook the man's hand, and left. In the car, he sat for a long time before starting the engine. He didn't call anyone. He didn't open his phone. At pickup, he was early. Too early. He waited. When his daughter came out, she smiled. You didn't forget, she said. No, he said. I didn't. At home, he made dinner with what they had. He counted money quietly later, after she was asleep. He didn't panic. He didn't make plans yet. He looked at his phone. I lost my job. He typed. He stared at the words. Then he deleted them. He wrote instead, Can we talk tomorrow? The reply came after a few minutes. Yes. He set the phone down. Losing the job hurt, but what unsettled him more was how little it surprised him. The ground beneath him hadn't given way. It had thinned, and he could feel it. The call came while he was making lunches. He had already packed his daughter's bag, lined her shoes by the door, checked the weather twice. He moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, spreading peanut butter evenly, cutting the sandwich clean down the middle. He wrapped it carefully, pressing the edges flat so it wouldn't open in her bag. His phone buzzed on the counter. He ignored it at first. Finished sealing the lunch. Slid it into the side pocket. Only then did he look. Her name. He didn't answer right away. He wiped his hands on a towel and leaned back against the counter, staring at the screen as it buzzed again. The sound felt louder in the quiet kitchen. Daddy? His daughter called from the hallway. I'm here, he said. He picked up the phone and answered. Yes, he said. I heard, she said. No greeting, no pause. He closed his eyes briefly. How? You work in a small world, she said. Even when you think you've left it. I didn't call to tell you, Lee said. No, she said. You called because you needed to. He looked toward the hallway. His daughter stood there, backpack on, watching him. He turned slightly so she couldn't see his face. I can't talk long, he said. Neither can I, she replied. That's why I'm calling. There was movement on her end. Papers shifting. A door closing. I won't pretend this is good timing, she said, but it is honest timing. I'm not ready, he said. You don't have the luxury of readiness right now. His daughter took a step closer. He held up one finger to her, signaling for a moment. She nodded and sat down on the bench by the door. What are you offering? He asked. She didn't hesitate. She laid it out clearly. A role with authority but boundaries. a salary that made his stomach tighten, benefits, stability, a start date that assumed his answer. "You've already decided," he said. "I've prepared," she corrected. "The decision is still yours. At what cost?" She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. "At the cost of being seen," she said, "at the cost of expectation." He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the counter. "I won't disappear into this," he said. "I can't." "I'm not asking you to," she said, "but I am asking you to show up." He heard his daughter shift on the bench. "Daddy!" she said softly. "We're going to be late." He covered the phone with his hand. "2 minutes," he said. She nodded again, trusting him. He returned to the call. "My daughter comes first." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm calling now, not later." "You don't get it," he said. "First means first, not when it's convenient." "I do get it," she said, "and that's why this role exists." He exhaled slowly. "If I say yes, things will change," she said. "Not all at once, but they will." "And if I say no?" She didn't answer immediately. "You'll manage," she said, "until you can't." The words weren't cruel. They were factual. That was what unsettled him most. He looked at his daughter again. She was tracing the seam of her backpack with her finger, humming under her breath. "I won't gamble with her life," he said. "Neither am I," she replied. "I'm offering you a way to stop gambling alone." He closed his eyes. He thought of the meeting with his manager, of the empty desk, of the promise he'd made at the corner. "I need guarantees," he said. "You'll have a contract," she said. "But guarantees are something else." "I need to know I can leave," he said. "If it becomes too much." "You can," she said, "but leaving always costs something." Silence stretched between them. "What's the start date?" he asked. She named it. Soon enough that it made his chest tighten. "That doesn't give me time," he said. "It gives you truth," she replied. He looked at the clock. They were already late. "I need to take my daughter to school," he said. "I know," she said. "Call me back after." He didn't hang up right away. "Why now?" he asked. She paused. Just long enough to matter. "Because I saw you," she said, "and you were already carrying the weight. I'm not adding it. I'm acknowledging it." He ended the call. They walked to school faster than usual. His daughter had to jog to keep up. He slowed down, then slowed more until their steps matched again. "You were on the phone," she said. "Yes." "With the lady?" "Yes." She thought about this. "Is she nice?" He considered the question carefully. "She's honest," he said. "That's not the same," she said. "No," he agreed. "It isn't." At the school gate, she stopped. "Are we okay?" she asked. He crouched in front of her, adjusting the strap on her backpack. "We are right now," he said. She nodded. "Okay." She went inside without looking back. He stood there longer than usual, watching the door close behind her. At home, the silence felt heavier than before. He sat at the table and stared at the contract she had already emailed. He hadn't noticed when it came in. He read it once, then again. The words were clear, the expectations firm but framed as reasonable. This was not a conversation anymore. This was an opening. He thought of the lunches, the notes, the promises made at corners and doorways. His phone buzzed. "I need an answer today." He typed slowly. "If I do this, I don't do it halfway." The reply came almost immediately. "Neither do I." He looked around the kitchen, the chair his daughter used, the magnet holding her drawing on the fridge. He pressed his thumb to the screen. "I'll come in tomorrow." The message sent. The room didn't change. The world outside didn't shift. But something had moved. Something that would not return to where it had been. He sat there, hands flat on the table, waiting for the feeling to catch up. It didn't. Not yet. The first morning felt wrong. Not because anything was different at home, but because it wasn't. He still packed lunch, still checked the weather, still waited while his daughter tied her shoes twice because the first knot didn't feel right. But underneath the routine, there was a tightness he hadn't felt before, a sense that the morning no longer belonged entirely to them. He dropped her off and stayed long enough to watch her disappear inside. Only then did he turn back to the car. The building was already awake when he arrived. Lights on, security alert, people moving with purpose. He parked where he was told to park and followed the path he'd been given. Badge clipped to his jacket, unfamiliar weight against his chest. Inside, everything was glass and quiet corners. Conversations stopped when he passed. Not abruptly, just enough. He felt it without needing to look. A woman at the front desk smiled politely. "They're expecting you." He nodded and followed her down a hallway that smelled faintly of coffee and something sharper. She left him at a door and knocked once before opening it. She stood when he entered. "You're early," she said. "I had time," he replied. "That won't last." He didn't sit until she did. The meeting was brief. She outlined expectations again, though they were already written. Introductions followed, names he recognized, faces he'd seen in articles. People who measured others quickly, then moved on. "This is a start," she said simply. They nodded. Some smiled. One man didn't. He took notes even when he didn't need to. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, he chose words that didn't invite debate. By mid-morning, his phone buzzed. A message from the school. Reminder. Field trip forms due today. His stomach tightened. He'd left the form on the counter. He excused himself quietly and stepped into an empty office. He called the school, apologized, asked if he could email the form during lunch. "Yes," the secretary said, "but we need it by noon." He checked the time. It was already close. Back in the room, discussion continued without him. He re-entered without comment, but the rhythm had shifted. He caught her eye across the table. She gave a small nod. Not reassurance. Acknowledgement. At noon, he sent the form. At 1, he missed a meeting because he was on the phone with the pediatrician, rescheduling an appointment that had been set weeks ago. When he returned, the room was quieter than before. "You all right?" someone asked. "Yes," he said. They didn't ask again. By the end of the day, he felt exposed, not incompetent, just visible. Every absence noted, every boundary quietly recorded. She stopped by his office before he left. "You didn't stay for the wrap-up," she said. "I had to leave," he replied. She leaned against the doorframe. "This is what I meant." "I know," he said, "and I meant what I said, too." She studied him for a moment. Then she nodded. "Pick your daughter up," she said. "We'll talk tomorrow." He didn't thank her. At pickup, his daughter spotted him immediately. "You're late," she said. "I know," he replied. She looked at his jacket. "You look different." "How?" "Like when you're tired but pretending not to be." He knelt to zip her coat. "Did you have a good day?" "Yes," she said, "but I was looking for you." "I was here," he said, "just not early." She considered this. On the walk home, she swung their hands harder than usual. "Are you going to be late tomorrow, too?" she asked. "I don't know yet," he said. She frowned. "I don't like not knowing." "Neither do I," he said. That night, he sat at the table filling out paperwork while she colored beside him. She handed him a crayon that had snapped in half. "It still works," she said. He smiled faintly and took it. Later, after she slept, he stood in the doorway of her room again. Everything was where it should be. Nothing missing. Nothing broken. Still, he felt the difference. He had stepped back into the light, and light had a way of asking for more than it first revealed. The changes didn't announce themselves. They arrived quietly, folded into the days the way dust settles on unused surfaces. At first, he told himself nothing had altered. He still woke before his alarm, still packed lunches the same way, still walked his daughter to school when time allowed. But the margins had narrowed. The space for delay had thinned. On the third morning, she ate breakfast alone. He stood in the doorway, jacket on, phone pressed to his ear, nodding to someone who couldn't see him. She watched him over the rim of her bowl, spoon paused. "You're leaving," she said. "I'll be back," he replied. "That's not what I meant." He crouched, lowered his voice. "I have to go early today." She nodded, but she didn't smile. "Okay." He kissed the top of her head and left, before the question that formed in her eyes could turn into words. That afternoon, he missed pickup. Not by much. 10 minutes. Enough. She sat on the low wall by the gate when he arrived, her backpack beside her feet, her teacher standing nearby. She didn't cry. She didn't run. "I waited," she said. "I'm sorry," he said. He didn't explain. He didn't defend it. The teacher smiled politely and said nothing. On the walk home, she didn't swing their hands. "Did you forget?" she asked. "No," he said. "I got stuck." "On purpose?" He stopped walking. He turned to face her. "No," he said. "Never on purpose." She studied him. Then she nodded, as if filing the information away for later. At home, she went straight to her room. He followed after a minute and sat on the edge of her bed while she changed. "I don't like when you're not there," she said, not looking at him. "I know," he said. "Are you going to stop?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. "I'm going to try," he said. She accepted that. But something had shifted. He felt it as clearly as if the furniture had moved. That evening he cooked while she sat at the table, her homework untouched. She stared at the page without writing. "Do you need help?" he asked. "No." He waited. Eventually, she pushed the paper toward him. "I don't get it," she said. He sat beside her and worked through the problem step by step. She followed, but without her usual focus. "You're thinking about work," she said. "Yes," he admitted. She sighed. "I don't like your work." "I know." "Can you quit?" The question was simple. The answer was not. "I can't," he said. "Why?" He looked at the bills on the counter, the calendar on the wall, the note she taped to the fridge weeks ago, reminding him about library day. "Because quitting costs things," he said. She thought about that. "So does staying." He didn't respond. That night, after she was asleep, he checked his email. A meeting had been moved earlier. Another added late. He adjusted his calendar, watching the spaces disappear. He sent a message to her teacher, apologizing again. The reply was polite, understanding. It did not erase what had happened. In the morning, his daughter woke before him. He found her already dressed, sitting on her bed. "You forgot to wake me," she said. "I didn't mean to." "I know," she said, "but you did." He walked her to school that day, even though it made him late. He stood at the gate until she went inside, then turned back toward the car. At work, no one commented on his arrival time. They noticed it silently. By the end of the week, the routine they'd built together no longer fit perfectly. It still held, but only if handled carefully. On Friday night she asked, "Are we still us?" He sat beside her on the couch, choosing his words. "Yes," he said, "but we're adjusting." She leaned against him, but not as heavily as before. In the quiet that followed, he understood something he hadn't wanted to name. The cost wasn't coming later. It was already here. And it was small enough to miss, if he wasn't watching closely. The first time it became visible to others, he didn't notice right away. It happened in a meeting room with too many chairs and not enough space. People stood along the walls, cups in hand, laptops balanced against their arms. He took a seat near the end of the table, setting his notebook down carefully, aligning it with the edge. She entered last. The room shifted. Conversations ended mid-sentence. People straightened without realizing they were doing it. She took her place at the head of the table and began speaking before anyone fully settled. As she talked, her eyes moved around the room, landing on each person briefly. When they reached him, they stayed a moment longer than necessary. Not long enough to be obvious, long enough to be noticed. Someone beside him leaned over and whispered, "You know her well?" He didn't answer. After the meeting, the whisper became a question asked aloud. "So, a woman said near the coffee machine. How long have you two been connected? He poured cream into his cup and stirred slowly. We work together, he said. She smiled. That's not what I meant. He met her gaze. That's all there is. The smile tightened. Of course. By the end of the day, the tone had shifted. People spoke more carefully around him. Some deferred when they hadn't before. Others pulled back entirely. He felt the recalibration happening in real time. At pickup, his daughter was quiet. On the walk home, she kicked at a loose stone until it rolled into the street. Someone asked me about you today, she said. Who? A girl in my class. She said her mom saw you on the internet. He stopped walking. What did she say? That you're important now. He crouched in front of her. Did that bother you? She shrugged. She said it like it was a bad thing. He nodded slowly. What did you say? I said you're my dad. That was enough? Yes. At home, he checked his phone. A news alert. A photo from a public event he'd attended briefly, standing several steps behind her. His face wasn't the focus, but it was there. Recognizable. He turned the phone face down. That evening, she didn't ask for help with homework. She finished it alone and left it on the table. You didn't check it, she said. I will, he replied. She waited. When he didn't move, she picked it up and carried it to her room. Later, he stood in the doorway and watched her read, her back to him. Did I do it right? She asked without turning. Yes, he said. She nodded and went back to her book. The distance wasn't dramatic. It was measured, controlled, but it was new. At work the next day, a decision was made without him. Not maliciously, just efficiently. We assumed you'd be fine with it, someone said afterward. He nodded. He was fine with it. But he understood what it meant. At lunch, he ate alone. That night, as he tucked his daughter in, she asked, Are people going to talk about us? Some might, he said. Do we have to listen? No, he said. She considered this. Okay. She turned over and pulled the blanket up to her chin. In the living room, he sat with the lights off, watching the reflection of passing cars move across the wall. His phone buzzed once. A message from her. This is part of it. He didn't reply. He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. He was aware of how quickly association became assumption, of how easily a role could shift without consent, of how his daughter had noticed before he had. The visibility he'd stepped into was no longer neutral. It had a shape now, and it was pressing inward. He tried to pull back quietly, not in a way anyone could point to. No announcements, no confrontations. He left meetings early when he could. He declined invitations that arrived without explanation. He stopped walking beside her in public spaces, choosing seats farther away, entering rooms after she did. It didn't work. The work still found him. Questions routed through his inbox instead of hers. Decisions paused until he weighed in. His name appeared in places it hadn't before. One afternoon, she called him into her office. You're avoiding me, she said. I'm working, he replied. She gestured to the chair. He didn't sit. You're trying to make this smaller, she said. It won't be. I didn't agree to be visible, he said. I agreed to do a job. This job comes with gravity, she said. You knew that. I knew it intellectually, he said. I didn't know what it would do at home. She studied him. What did it do? He didn't answer right away. My daughter waited for me, he said. She shouldn't have had to. She nodded once. That won't be the last time. He met her gaze. Then this won't work. The words were calm, deliberate. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she leaned back. If you step away now, she said, you won't step back in later. I know. You'll lose influence. I already have. She exhaled slowly. You're wrong. Maybe, he said, but I'm not flexible on this. She folded her hands. You're asking me to bend an institution around your life. No, he said. I'm asking you not to break it. Silence held. When she spoke again, her voice was controlled. Take the rest of the day. I'm fine. Go, she said, before we say something we can't take back. He left without argument. At pickup, his daughter ran to him, relief visible before she tried to hide it. You're early, she said. Yes. She smiled. It was small, but it mattered. At home, they cooked together. She spilled flour on the counter and laughed. He laughed too before he could stop himself. Later, after she was asleep, his phone buzzed. We need to talk about your role. He didn't respond. The next morning, his access badge didn't work. The guard apologized and let him through manually. It happened again at the elevator, and again at his office door. By noon, he understood. At 3, HR asked him to come downstairs. This isn't disciplinary, the woman said. It's structural. He nodded. I expected that. We're reassigning your responsibilities. To whom? Someone with more availability. He didn't argue. You'll keep your title, she added, but your scope will narrow. He signed the paper without comment. At pickup, his daughter noticed immediately. You're not tired, she said. No, he said. Did you quit? No. She looked at him closely. Did you lose something? He considered lying. He didn't. Yes, he said. She nodded. Okay. That night he stood in the doorway of her room longer than usual. He had said no, and the cost had arrived, not loudly, but permanently. He noticed the quiet first, not the good kind, not the kind that followed bedtime or settled in after a long day. This was different. It sat between them uninvited, filling the small spaces where conversation used to live. They were eating dinner when it happened. Pasta, too soft, sauce from a jar he usually avoided, but had bought because it was fast. She twirled her fork without lifting it, watching the noodles slide back into the bowl. You didn't ask about my day, she said. I'm sorry, he said. How was it? She shrugged. Fine. He waited. She didn't add anything. He reached for his water, took a sip, then set the glass down more carefully than necessary. Did something happen? He asked. She shook her head. No. He knew better than to push. He let the silence return, but it didn't soften. It stayed sharp around the edges. After dinner, she followed him into the living room instead of going to her room. She sat on the floor, leaning against the couch, her back to him. He turned the television on, then off again. You're home more now, she said. Yes, but you're not really here. The words landed without force. No accusation, no anger. Just observation. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm trying, he said. She nodded. I know. That should have been enough. It wasn't. She reached for one of her shoes, pulling the loose thread at the seam. When you were late, she said. I didn't cry. I know. I waited because I thought maybe you forgot how to come get me. His chest tightened. I didn't forget. I know, she said again, but I didn't know that then. He didn't speak. He couldn't find a response that didn't sound like defense. She finally turned and looked at him. I don't need you to be important, she said. He looked at her, fully now. I need you to be there. That was it. No metaphor. No explanation. No pause for effect. Just truth. He felt it settle in him slowly, like something finding its correct place after being carried wrong for too long. He nodded once. Okay. She watched him, waiting to see if the word would hold. He stood and picked up his phone from the table. He didn't look at it yet. Come here, he said. She stood and stepped into him. He wrapped his arms around her, feeling how small she still was, how easily she fit. He didn't speak while he held her. He let the moment be exactly what it was. Later, after she was asleep, he sat at the table with the phone in front of him. He opened the message from her. We need to revisit your decision. He typed slowly. I won't trade presence for importance. The reply came quickly. That's not what this is. He stared at the screen. Then he typed. It is for me. He didn't wait for a response. He opened his calendar and began deleting meetings. Not all of them, just enough. He sent emails that were brief and clear. He declined without apology. When the phone buzzed again, he turned it face down. In the quiet kitchen, he felt something shift. Not relief, alignment. He stood and walked down the hallway, stopping at his daughter's door. He listened to her breathing for a moment, steady and untroubled. The world outside had not changed, but his center had, and whatever came next would have to move around that. The changes he made were not dramatic. No resignations, no final conversations. He didn't burn anything down. He adjusted. He moved pieces carefully, the way he had learned to do since becoming a father, testing each shift to see what it disturbed. He stopped answering emails after 6. Not all of them, just the ones that could wait. When someone followed up, he replied the next morning without explanation. A few people noticed. No one challenged him directly. He blocked time on his calendar and labeled it simply unavailable. When asked, he said, "I have a standing obligation." He did not elaborate. At home, he reset the routines that had slipped. Breakfast together, walks to school when possible, notes in the lunch bag returned, shorter now but consistent. He let his daughter choose dinner one night a week again, even when the choice was impractical. The first morning he walked her to school after weeks of inconsistency, she noticed. "You're back," she said. "I never left," he replied. She looked at him sideways. "You were far." "Yes," he said. "I was." She took his hand more firmly than usual. At work, the consequences arrived quietly. He was no longer invited to certain meetings. Decisions were made without his input and sent to him afterward. When he offered feedback, it was acknowledged politely, then set aside. He accepted this. One afternoon, he found his access to a shared drive had been removed. He requested it again. The request sat unanswered. He did not escalate. When she finally called him into her office, it was late in the day. "You're making yourself smaller," she said. "I'm making myself stable," he replied. She stood by the window looking out instead of at him. "You know how this reads," she said. To others, "I do," he said. "They think you're disengaging. I'm prioritizing." She turned then. "You're costing yourself." "Yes," he said. She watched him closely. "And you're fine with that?" "I am," he said, "because I know what I'm protecting." Silence stretched. "You won't get this time back," she said. "This window." He nodded. "Neither will my daughter." Her jaw tightened slightly. She looked away again. "You were better than this," she said. He didn't take the bait. "I was different," he said. She didn't respond. That evening, he picked his daughter up early. They stopped at the store on the way home, something they hadn't done in weeks. She pushed the cart, steering badly, bumping into shelves. "Careful," he said. "I am being careful," she said, correcting the cart. At home, they cooked slowly. She spilled something. He didn't rush to clean it. He handed her a towel instead. Later, she sat on the floor with her homework spread out around her. He worked nearby, not on his laptop, but on a stack of printed pages he'd brought home. "You're not typing," she said. "No," he said. She smiled, small and pleased. That night, he checked his bank account. Numbers shifted in ways he didn't like. He adjusted the budget again, crossing out a few things, making notes in the margin. He didn't tell her. The next morning, his badge failed again. This time, no one rushed to fix it. He waited. Eventually, someone let him in. At his desk, he found a note. "We'll talk next week." No signature. He folded the paper and put it in his pocket. At pickup, his daughter ran to him, breathless. "You're here early again," she said. "Yes." "Did you lose more things?" He considered the question. "Yes," he said. She thought about that. "Did you lose us?" "No," he said immediately. She nodded. "Okay." That night, after she was asleep, he stood at the kitchen counter and looked around. The apartment felt the same, but the edges were closer now. He had recalibrated, and the cost of that choice was no longer abstract, it was measurable. And still growing. The letter came on a Monday. Not an email. Not a meeting request. An envelope left on his desk, unmarked, placed there by someone who hadn't wanted to be seen doing it. He noticed it when he sat down, the paper heavier than it needed to be. Inside was a single page. A formal notice. Clear language. No emotion. His role was being redefined. Effective immediately. His title would remain, but the authority attached to it would not. His access would be limited. His responsibilities narrowed. The explanation was brief, organizational alignment. He read it twice, then folded it, and put it back in the envelope. At lunch, he ate at his desk. He didn't look for company. No one came looking for him either. When someone passed, they nodded politely and kept moving. He left early without telling anyone. At pickup, his daughter was sitting on the steps instead of the wall. She stood when she saw him, brushing dirt from her hands. "You're early," she said. "Yes." She smiled. It reached her eyes this time. At home, he set the letter on the counter and didn't open it again. He cooked dinner from what they had left in the fridge. No extras, no substitutions. She didn't complain. After they ate, she spread her school papers across the table. "I have a presentation," she said, "on Friday." "About what?" "Our family." He paused. "What do you have to do?" "Just talk," she said. "About who we live with." He nodded. "Okay." That night, after she was asleep, he sat at the table with the letter open in front of him. He wrote numbers on a scrap of paper. Added. Subtracted. Crossed out. He adjusted the budget again, more aggressively this time. He canceled the streaming service, reduced groceries, pushed the emergency line thinner than he liked. He didn't panic, but he didn't pretend either. The next morning, he walked his daughter to school. "Are you worried?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "About what?" "Money," he said. She thought about that. "Do we have enough?" "For now," he said. She nodded. "Okay." At work, his access card worked only for the front door. He waited to be let into the rest. No one apologized. In the afternoon, she appeared at his desk. "You got the letter?" she said. "Yes, you knew this would happen." "Yes," she studied him. "You're choosing comfort over growth." He met her gaze. "I'm choosing stability over reach. You're shrinking. I'm anchoring." Silence followed. "You won't be here much longer," she said. "No," he agreed. She didn't ask where he would go. She didn't offer alternatives. That evening, his daughter practiced her presentation in the living room. She stood straight, holding a piece of paper with both hands. "My family is small," she read. "It's just me and my dad." He sat on the couch, listening. "He takes me to school," she continued. "He makes dinner. He stays." She looked up at him. "Is that okay?" "Yes," he said. "That's perfect." She smiled and went back to reading. Later, when she was asleep, he packed a box from his office. Not everything, just the personal items. The mug she'd given him years ago. A notebook. A photo he'd never put on his desk. On Friday, he attended the presentation. He stood in the back of the classroom, hands in his pockets. When his daughter spoke, she didn't look at him until the end. When she did, her eyes found his immediately. Afterward, on the walk home, she said, "I said you stay." "Yes," he said. "That's true," she said. "Right?" "Yes," he said again. At home, he opened his laptop and searched for jobs. He filtered carefully. No travel. Predictable hours, less money. He applied to 3. The stability he was building was narrow. It didn't leave room for ambition, but it held. And for now, that was enough. The call came while he was folding laundry. His daughter sat on the floor beside him, matching socks with exaggerated seriousness. She held 2 that didn't match and looked up. "These go together," she said. "They don't," he replied. "They do if you don't look too hard." He almost smiled. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. He didn't reach for it right away. He finished folding the shirt in his hands and stacked it neatly. Only then did he pick up the phone. Her name. He stepped into the kitchen and answered. "Yes," he said. "I need a decision," she said. No greeting. No preamble. "I've been making one," he replied. "Not the one that matters," she said. He leaned against the counter. "Say it." She didn't hesitate. "I can fix this. The letter, the reassignment, all of it." "At what cost?" he asked. She paused, just long enough to acknowledge the question. "You come back fully," she said. "Visibility, authority, travel when needed. You stop carving yourself into pieces." He closed his eyes briefly. "And my daughter?" he asked. "She adjusts," she said. "Children do." He opened his eyes. "She already has," he said. "That's the problem." Silence held on the line. "You'll lose everything you've built," she said. "I already have," he replied, "just not the part that mattered." She exhaled slowly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," he said. "I'm making it honest." "You don't get to stand still in this world," she said. "I'm not standing still," he said. "I'm standing somewhere else." She didn't speak. In the living room, his daughter called out, "Daddy." "I'm here," he said. He turned back to the call. "This is the offer," she said. "Last one." He thought of the classroom, the presentation, the line she had read without hesitation. "He stays. I'm done," he said. She let the silence stretch. "If you walk away now," she said, "you won't be invited back." "I know," he said. "You'll be irrelevant." He looked through the doorway at his daughter, now lining socks in a row. "I already am," he said. "To the right people." He ended the call. He stood there for a moment, phone still in his hand. Nothing followed. No second call. No message. He returned to the living room and sat on the floor. "Did you finish?" his daughter asked. "Almost," he said. She handed him the last pair of socks. They didn't match. "These are fine," she said. He folded them together anyway. That night he emailed his resignation. One paragraph. Clear, polite, effective immediately. He shut the laptop and didn't reopen it. They ate dinner quietly. She talked about school. He listened fully, without dividing his attention. At bedtime, she asked, "Are you going to work tomorrow?" "No," he said. She frowned. "Ever?" "Yes," he said. "Just somewhere else?" She considered this. "Will you be there when I get out?" "Yes," he said. She nodded and turned over. He stood in the doorway longer than usual, watching her breathe. In the living room, his phone remained silent. The choice had been made. Not dramatically, not publicly, but completely. The next morning felt unfinished. Not empty. Not calm. Just missing something he couldn't name right away. He woke at the usual time out of habit, then stayed in bed longer than he meant to. The apartment was quiet. No emails waiting, no calendar reminders, no urgency pulling him forward. He made breakfast anyway. His daughter came out of her room rubbing her eyes, hair uneven from sleep. "You're up," she said. "So are you." She sat at the table and watched him move around the kitchen. "You don't look rushed," she said. "I'm not." She nodded, absorbing this. "Okay?" They walked to school together. Slowly. He didn't check the time once. At the gate, she stopped. "You'll be here," she said. "Yes." She went inside without asking him to promise. He went home instead of to an office. The hours stretched differently. He cleaned what didn't need cleaning, organized papers that were already sorted. He searched job listings again, refining the filters further. Fewer results appeared. He applied to one and closed the browser. At noon, his phone buzzed. A message from a former colleague. "Heard you left. Bold move." He didn't reply. Another message came later. "She's furious." He set the phone down. At pickup, he was already there. His daughter spotted him and smiled before she tried not to. "You're early again," she said. "Yes." She didn't comment further. At home, they baked something from a box. The instructions were unclear. They improvised. The result wasn't good, but they ate it anyway. That evening, he checked his bank account again. The numbers hadn't changed yet. He wrote a new budget on a fresh page. Tighter, more careful. Still possible. He didn't tell her. Over the next few days, the world adjusted without him. Emails stopped coming. His badge access expired completely. His name disappeared from documents he hadn't known he was still on. No one called to argue. No one tried to change his mind. The loss arrived quietly. One afternoon, his daughter asked, "Do people still know you?" "Yes," he said. "Do they need you?" "Not like before." She thought about this. "Do I?" "Yes," he said. That answer didn't require thought. He took temporary work that paid less than it should have. Contract hours. Predictable. He arranged his schedule around school hours without asking permission. The work was smaller. It fit. At pickup, he was always there. Weeks passed. One evening, as he washed dishes, his daughter stood in the doorway. "You don't talk about her anymore," she said. "No." "Did she go away?" "Yes," he said. "Good," she said, and walked back to her room. He stood at the sink, hands in the water, and stayed there longer than necessary. Something had been lost. Status. Momentum. A version of himself that moved easily in large rooms. He felt the absence, but it didn't echo. It sat quietly, contained. That night, he turned off the light in the living room and stood for a moment in the dark. Loss didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply stopped asking for space, and when it did, something else moved in. The next wedding was smaller, not fewer people, just quieter. The community hall instead of a hotel ballroom, folding chairs instead of rows lined in fabric. No one stood at the back pretending not to take up space. He arrived early this time, not to avoid attention, to help. He carried a box of programs from the car while his daughter walked beside him, holding a small bag of petals she'd been asked to hand out later. She wore a simple dress she'd chosen herself. No ribbon, no fuss. Inside, he set the box down near the front row. "Here?" someone asked. "Yes," he said. "That's fine." They took seats near the aisle. Not hidden, not central. Just present. His daughter swung her legs and leaned over to whisper, "I can see everything." He nodded. "Me too." When the music started, it was softer than the last time. No phones lifted, no murmurs of anticipation. Just movement. He didn't scan the room. He didn't check who was watching. He watched her instead. She stood when she was supposed to, walked when it was her turn, dropped petals carefully, one at a time, focused and serious. When she finished, she looked for him before returning to her seat. He met her eyes and nodded. She smiled. During the ceremony, he stayed still. No jacket on his lap. No need to hold something to ground himself. His hands rested open, empty. When the bride appeared, he didn't feel the pull to measure the room. He didn't feel eyes searching for him. Nothing tilted. Afterward, as people stood and talked, his daughter tugged his sleeve. "Can we stay?" she asked. "Yes," he said. They stayed. They talked to people he knew only by name. They ate cake that was too sweet. He held her plate while she balanced a fork and tried not to drop frosting on her shoes. At one point, she leaned against him and said, "You're not looking around." "No," he said. "Why not?" "I don't need to." She nodded, satisfied. When it was time to leave, he carried the empty box back to the car. She followed, humming. "Daddy," she said, climbing into her seat, "you were in the front." He closed the door gently. "Yes," he said. He drove home without checking his phone. The streetlights passed in a steady rhythm. At home, he helped her change, then sat beside her bed until her breathing slowed. Later, he stood in the doorway as he always did. But this time, he didn't wait for something to settle. It already had. The world outside still moved quickly. Titles still changed hands. Rooms still filled with people watching for the right moment to look away or lean in. But here, in this smaller place, the seat was taken. And he was exactly where he was supposed to be.